Welcome to Interviews with Innocence, a podcast about spirituality, consciousness, and exploring the wisdom our children bring into this world. I believe that our very young children are our greatest teachers. After all, they're the masters of living in the present moment, bubbling in unconditional love, enjoying the messiness of life, and curious about the universe in all its dimensions. The pure essence that young children exhibit lives within all of us. My hope is that these interviews will help us discover, embrace, and connect with the sacred core of childhood that resides within each of our hearts. I am your host, Marla Hughes. Today, I have Kathleen Friend, MD, on the show. Dr. Friend is a child psychiatrist, musician, meditation teacher, and children's author. Dr. Friend obtained her MD from University of Miami. Her medical background includes residencies in internal medicine, nuclear medicine, and psychiatry. With close to 30 years of experience with all ages, she is currently working as a child psychiatrist in Tucson, Arizona. Prior to moving to the Southwest, she was founder and sole proprietor of Integrative Psychiatry of the Berkshires in Lenox, Massachusetts. Dr. Friend has experience in a wide array of non-pharmacological approaches, including nutrition, functional medicine, neurofeedback, meditation, trauma-sensitive therapy, energy medicine, nurtured heart approach, and heart rhythm meditation, which is what we're going to talk about today. She is the author of 2 children's books and another one that's coming up in the future. Her books are The Greatness Chair and Sarah in the Greatness Chair. These stories are designed to teach children and grown-ups a simple method to help them grow into their best selves. Based on the nurtured heart approach, this is in addition to the field of positive psychology. Welcome to the program, Kathleen.
Oh, welcome, Marla. I'm exhausted just listening to that bio.
Well, there was much more than that. I cut it short, so you can read it in the show notes, Kathleen.
Oh my goodness!
So
I'm very happy to be speaking with you.
Yeah, me too. I've been very excited about this interview. So I just love your background to be not only a child psychiatrist, but also a musician and into meditation and a children's author. Can you tell us a bit about your path down this unusual path?
Sure. Well, somewhere along the way, somebody thought it was a good idea that I go to medical school. So, I think I had a partial say in it.
Right.
But so I started out, innocently enough, thinking I was going to save the world through medicine and do good. Like a lot of doctors. A lot of doctors are actually quite idealistic and optimistic, and or at least start out that way. And so, but I always knew that deep down that I was an artist and liked music and other creative arts. So over the course of my life, I was able to bring some of those things in. And also, I figured out that instead of seeing medicine and somehow being a doctor versus an artist as being separate, I thought, well, if I'm such a creative person, why don't I use my creativity in medicine?
Beautiful.
For a solution. So once I kind of opened that up, then a lot of things happened.
Right. So what inspired you to start going more of the, I'll say, holistic, even spiritual path, working with children and their parents, trying to not use as much pharmacological, therapy?
Right. Well, it became pretty apparent to me that the traditional methods I was taught were limited. And I initially trained in actually adult and geriatric psychiatry and not
Oh,
child psychiatry. Yeah. And so I had the great fortune that I trained in psychiatry at a time when we were still taught therapy. And I was in New York City, so I was really trained by a lot of old psychoanalysts.
Mm.
And, you know, even though maybe it's not popular, they were very humanistic and creative people. So, but little by little, psychiatry became pushed into a corner of medication checks, and the therapy really went to pretty much everybody else. And so, the more that happened, the more I realized I had to break out of that. And long story short, when I moved to Tucson, I, excuse me, I, gave up my integrated practice in Massachusetts and I just took a job. I didn't want to restart a whole private practice. And I was really fortunate that I was offered a job as a child psychiatrist,
Nice.
even though I didn't do a child fellowship. I mean, that was like amazing. I think it was divine intervention
Yes.
because I love kids. I love kids and families, and there's no reason I should have gotten the job. But I did. I mean, on the spot. So I knew something was up right away. I understood that I was being guided. So I took it really I took that very seriously. And even though the employment was at a community mental health center that was very traditional and, pretty much what they wanted from me was my prescription pad,
Mm-hmm.
I chose to uh, be creative even within that role. So I started taking kids off meds. I started talking to the parents about nutrition, some supplements, but then, and that was all good. But then, one day I realized that none of the kids wanted to come in to the appointments. And they would like put their heads down and they would
Oh,
be ashamed. And I realized, oh, well, of course, because every time the parent was coming in, it was like a rap sheet.
right.
I mean, understandably, the parent, there was some, problems they were hoping I could help. So the parents were doing what they do when they come to a doctor, right? What, they tell you what the problems are, hoping you can help. Makes sense, right?
Mm.
But the kids were so full of shame
Oh,
and
breaks my heart.
I know it broke my heart too. So I thought to myself, this isn't going to work. So one day I just I I told the next person who came in, the next family, I said, I looked at the child and I said, I want you to come over here and sit in the chair next to me. Because normally they wouldn't, but if I made a direct command, usually
Right.
they would do. So the child came over and I just went nuts. I said, hey, how did you know you sat in my greatness chair? And the kid was like, what? And so they were looking around and saying, like, what's so great about this chair? They could see it was just an ordinary chair, right?
Right.
So I let them just puzzle that a little. And I said, oh, you are so smart. Yeah, of course. I mean, this is just an ordinary chair, isn't it? And they go, yeah. I said, but it's not about the chair. It's about the person sitting in the chair.
I
So,
love
what
it.
can you tell me about your greatness? Well, that changed everything when I started doing that because most of the kids really weren't sure what to say at the beginning. Like, wow, what's this crazy doctor doing? But I coached them and helped them, and we were able to discover very simple things that were going right in the moment, right there in the chair. Like for example, let's say the child didn't know how to answer my question. Like, and even some children said, well, what does greatness mean?
Yes. Mm.
Something like simple like that. So I would right away say, wow, you are already showing the greatness of curiosity. You're showing like perseverance because you really didn't know what I'm asking of you, but you're trying. So everything they did, no matter what they did in the chair, I turned it around into something that put a light on a quality of that child that they were showing me. Well, of course, they loved that.
Of course. And so different from what they had anticipated.
And then usually it was the mother, not always, but then I would see the parent sitting there, and their eyes would be just lit up, and they would say, you could see that they were just waiting to jump in and tell
Right.
me more greatness qualities about their kid. And so it became very clear to me, well, parents don't really want to come in and tell me all the bad stuff. You
Right.
know, what parent wouldn't love the opportunity to share the greatness about their children and to let somebody else see that greatness? So that was kind of how I got into the greatness chair idea. And
Wow.
of course, we then, after this setting of the energy, if you will, we were like setting an atmosphere of strength, trying to see the child, really, really just see them. And then, of course, then if mom brought up the problems, it had a different energy about it.
Right.
And so then we would talk about maybe like what happened at school or something. But the kids were okay. They felt held, they felt seen. And so then I wrote the books. Then I wrote the children's books about it.
Wow. That is such a great story. And I know you use the heart nurtured approach. Can you tell us, I think that's what, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the nurtured heart approach.
Nurtured heart approach, yes.
Yeah, this is a really beautiful uh, way of working with children and families that was developed, my goodness, how long ago? I don't know, 15 years? I could be wrong about that. By Howard Glasser, who actually lives here in Tucson, where I live. And I trained in this method, oh gosh, maybe 7, 8 years ago, but I couldn't use it because they would never give me long enough appointments to train the families or the parents. And that's why I kind of went with the greatness chair, and I just
Right.
tried to be creative, like how can I put this in a half-hour appointment and basically teach some of the nurtured heart approach, even though I wasn't being given time to do the full approach. But the nurtured heart approach is really, it's not even a method, it's really a way of being. And it's all about it's an energy approach. It's about at its core, it's about seeing what's going right instead of what's going wrong.
Right.
And it's following the positive energy, and creating it. Um, how else could I explain that? It, and at a deeper level, when you start to see what the child is doing and notice them and look at their qualities, we're really, we say, oh, we're trying to build resilience or emotional wealth or inner wealth, but really you're kind of seeing the soul of the child.
Yes. Beautiful.
Like we all came here as a unique being, and how are we going to discover what that is?
Right.
Somebody has to see it, especially for children. We need mirrors. We need people to reflect back to us who we are. I mean, that's how children get their identity, when they're very young. Grown-ups, adults, we say things about them and they internalize that as their self. So we can build a better portfolio if we see the greatness qualities and help the child see them, because it really builds this road to their uniqueness and helps them then connect. Hopefully, the idea is then they can connect to their unique reason for being.
Right. Do you bring meditation into that at all? Because I know you're a meditation teacher. I don't know about for children, but I think of a little one then being, let's, we could even take meditation, that word out of it, but just sitting quietly and just absorbing that energy. And how do you use that in your practice with children? Or if you could, if you have the time.
Well, I've never really built that out so much for the children specifically, although I
Mm-hmm.
do teach heart rhythm meditation to adults.
Right.
And I teach in a school called the Institute for Applied Meditation on the Heart. But the thing, though, about the nurtured heart approach is that to really start seeing these qualities in the children, it works when you drop down actually into your heart and you try to see the child through your heart instead of your mind.
Right.
So it kind of comes in that way, and but I don't specifically teach children meditation.
Right. Maybe just sitting quietly. I'll never forget when I work in Ethiopia, and I was at it was a school specifically for the children who didn't have parents but were living with family members or with others, but some of them didn't have family at all, and they would come to school. And one day I started the Love Project there. And when we did an affirmation circle. Oh my gosh, Kathleen, it was the most, these boys that were probably 14, 15 years old. It's like they had never heard, this little circle of kids, poorest of the poor. They had never heard anybody ever say anything about kind about them. And they didn't have it really a support system. And they would, the tears and the love. And that's what I feel when I'm talking to you about this is all children just need that, for inner strength and be able to get along in this crazy world. Do you think that, let's say a child is 6 or 7 and they've kind of had it tough, they haven't had any of this sort of nurtured heart approach. Is it too late or can you begin? Yeah, yeah. She's
Oh,
shaking her head no
well,
for our
it's
listeners.
definitely not too late. It's
Yeah.
never too late. It's
Yeah.
never too
I mean,
late.
for us, it's not too late for us to just think
No.
about what we're really good at and then to hear, I guess that's the self-love, but then to have that affirmation too from those that your loved ones also.
We all need to be seen
Yes.
and noticed for who we really are. And honestly, the nurtured heart approach has gone, um, like if you go to a training these days, it's not just about the kids, it's also about the parents too.
Right.
And the parents, because honestly, to be really good at using this, you have to also be able to kind of reset yourself, regulate yourself as an adult, regulate yourself, get in your heart to be able to connect to the child's heart.
Speaking of that, how do you feel it would transform the world? Or not how, do you feel it would transform the world if this is how we lived soulfully? I will say soulfully, seeing a child's soul. And do you think that's changing at all?
You know, I, I think that we are in such a state of change, in the whole world right now.
Mhm.
And it's we can all see the division
Right,
that's
right.
currently going on. So, there's a group of people who um, are very fearful. I understand that. I mean, there's a
Okay.
lot of fearfulness, and when people are afraid, they tend to go back to the old ways. And when you're fearful, you're not usually wanting to change. you want to kind of keep the status quo, but what's happened for a lot of people is they realize that things aren't going to go back the way they were, and they're excited for that kind of change.
Mhm.
I think that when parents realize, like when they read my book or something, you're right, it's a very simple idea. And to really work the nurtured heart approach, there's a few more steps,
Right.
but the little ideas in my book are a great start. I'm telling you, if all the
Oh,
families just did those things, it would make a big difference. So um, I I think that if when parents experience, like when they experience somebody seeing them or their child in this simple way, they catch it.
yes.
Okay, there's a but kind of a catching, and if the parent experiences it themselves, and you show them their greatness, like what they feel, how good it feels, and let me just be really clear here. When I say calling out people's greatness, everything has to be true. You don't make anything up here.
Right.
And sometimes it's a stretch. We'd say, oh, you're doing blah, 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 and that shows your kindness. So sometimes we do take a little leap, and sometimes we're wrong, and the child will correct you. I mean, if it's really off, it's not going to land,
Yes, yes.
right? So then we kind of have to adjust ourselves. So first of all, this technique is no BS, none. It's
Yeah.
truth. We're trying to mirror truth because most children don't see their truth.
So Kathleen, what do you want to just okay, so you're a doctor. You worked with adults. You divine intervention. You're obviously a very spiritual, soulful person. You're perfect for this podcast and you love children. Um, what do you, Kathleen Friend, want to shout to the world?
Uh, well, uh, okay. Things are simpler than we make them.
Hmm.
Um, the simple message that I want to shout out is that trust your heart. The heart is smarter than the mind. We need our minds, don't get me wrong. We need our minds, our intelligence, our knowledge, but the mind should be a servant of the heart. And the natural heart loves. It really
Yes.
comes back to love.
Yes.
All the great mystics, all the great religions, all of them, they taught that, that's it, they all kind of boil down to the same thing. And it's really pretty simple.
It-
And love is a real energy that is made that comes from the heart. I mean, people have measured this, you know what I mean?
yes, yes, they have.
So it's an energy, it's an energetic property of the heart to love. It's our minds that judge and categorize and all those things. The heart doesn't do that.
That's
So that would be
beautiful.
my message to pay some attention to the voice of your heart and trust it more.
Right. Well, Kathleen, we need to wrap it up a little bit, but tell us briefly about your new book. I know it's a book for parents and teachers and to understand the principles and rationale behind the Greatness Chair. So, do you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, sure. Um, the book, I hope, will try to build it out a little bit and just kind of show that it's based in some solid principles.
Scientific, yes.
That it's actually based in like a lot of scientific principles, um, and also the social emotional learning frameworks for schools, the SEL frameworks. It really fits in very well there.
Right.
But I'm going to build out more activities, a lot of
Yeah.
activities
That's great.
for parents and teachers to do at home
Yeah.
or at school.
Well, I can't wait for that. So you'll have to come back on when it's out and we'll talk more about that. Well, is there anything you would like to add that I haven't asked you today?
Gosh, I don't think so.
Okay. And Kathleen, you are an angel to the world and to the children of the world, and I want to thank you. So, if people want to find you, how would they do that?
The easiest way to find me is to either go to greatnesschair.com website, or I have a Facebook page, it's The Greatness Chair. I think you have to have the in front of it. And either of those ways, especially through the website, there's a contact page and it gets you to my email and so
Right.
on.
And the books can be found on Amazon, and this will all be in our show notes.
Oh,
Inclu-
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, and also I think Barnes and Nobles. I mean, there's a number of outlets, but most people go to Amazon.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And have a wonderful evening. And I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot of work together in the future.
Oh,
I sure hope so. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening in today. If you want to learn more about the show, you can find us at interviewswithinnocence.com and on Facebook or Instagram at Interviews with Innocence. Please write me a message, tell me what you liked, and let me know what else you would like to hear. I would love to hear from you. And if you liked what you heard, please leave us an iTunes rating and review. It helps other listeners find the show. Thank you.